I'm back from New York and I just experienced Masquerade, the immersive Phantom of the Opera that's been generating buzz in the Broadway community for over a year. And I have so much to tell you about whether the designers delivered, why Christine grabbed my hand during the opening scene, and most importantly, is this a respectful reimagining or just an expensive gimmick? I'm Julian from Julian's Front Row Theater, and thank you. My Masquerade costume reaction video hit 2,000 views and got this channel 45 subscribers in just a few weeks. You wanted honest theater takes, so here's my complete Masquerade breakdown. Bottom line up front, this is an 8 out of 10 experience. This show does things with Phantom of the Opera that I never thought possible. The massive amount of work that the cast and crew put in to bring this show to life multiple times per day needs to be recognized. That being said, there are some frustrating compromises. My critiques come from a place of reverence for the original production, and I hope the creative team will make adjustments as the run progresses. This review will contain spoilers, so let's jump in. Leading up to our New York trip, I had a Phantom of the Opera movie night where we had macarons, half moon cookies to represent the Phantom's mask, and French 75 cocktails, because yes, I am that kind of theater nerd. Shout out to my friend Elizabeth and her sister Meg. They knew how excited I was for Masquerade and gave me these promotional materials from the show, including a letter from the OG himself and a prop newspaper. So let me set the scene. I saw the 2:15 p.m. performance on a Saturday with my best friend and my partner. Our Phantom was Jeff Kready. Our Christine was Claire Leyden, who is actually a swing, though you'd never know it. And our Raoul was Paul Adam Schaefer. There were no weak links whatsoever. Here's what you need to understand about Masquerade. The story is presented differently from the Broadway production. In this version, the Phantom is the protagonist and not Christine. They've reframed the story to put a much greater emphasis on the Phantom, and it works brilliantly. But this production comes with some trade-offs that keep it from being a perfect 10. The show runs about 2 hours with 40 to 50 people in your group, and you'll move throughout multiple floors of a converted art supply store on 57th Street. Let me start by talking about what I absolutely loved about the show. During the check-in process, the staff asks for your password that was distributed via email. They check your ID and they stamp your hand with a red Phantom logo. And they also distribute these beautiful black lace masks for those who didn't bring their own. After that, you're brought into the building where there is a free bag check and the opportunity to use a restroom. From there, you're led into a dimly lit room and you're presented with the option to drink either champagne or a non-alcoholic beverage. There is a violinist who plays a beautiful medley of the Phantom score, and you later learn in the production that this is actually Christine's father. But the real magic starts with Madame Giry. You enter a new room where the monkey music box sits on a pedestal. Madame Giry comes in and presents some of the background of the strange affair of the Phantom of the Opera. And from there, she starts the interactive element by teaching you a bit of the dance for Masquerade. At the end of her speech, the back wall of the room we were in opened up, and I turned around and Christine actually grabbed my hand and whisked me into the next room where all of the dancers were dressed in their stunning Masquerade outfits. There was gold confetti that showered down from the ceiling, and it was truly a feast for the senses between the stunningly intricate costumes, the audience participation with the dancing, and the iconic song. The intimacy creates moments that you would never be able to experience with the traditional Broadway version. For example, during the Hannibal rehearsal sequence, Carlotta, played by Satomi Hoffman, approached me and started chastising me for messing up her cues. She said something like, Giacomo, you're always getting it wrong. And then she shoved the severed head prop into my hands, which I later placed on a costume rack. I apologize profusely, and it was absolutely hilarious. It's moments like these that make this experience so unforgettable. And All I Ask of You performed literally on the roof. Even on a hot Manhattan day, seeing Christine and Raoul sing this sweeping love song in the wind was nothing short of spectacular. Since the focus of my last video was on the costumes, let's dive into it. The Masquerade sequence was beyond my expectations. The intricate outfits like the jester and the unicorn. This was definitely a high point of the show from a costume design perspective. Carlotta's gold dress during the Hannibal sequence was probably my favorite of the entire night. It was just packed with details that made it sparkle and shimmer under the lights. It really represented Emilio Sosa's everything but the kitchen sink approach, and I adored it. But here's where it gets kind of frustrating. I found the costumes very inconsistent, especially the principal performers. For example, Christine's dressing gown seemed way less detailed to me than the original version, and her Amnita dress for the Point of No Return had about a quarter of the detail of Maria Bjornsson's design. Also, the Phantom's Don Juan outfit during this sequence looked very cheap up close. During All I Ask of You, I looked between Raoul's costume and the vest that my partner was wearing, and their vests look almost identical, which I thought was pretty funny because my partner ordered his from Amazon and probably paid about $25. For a show that's grossed billions of dollars worldwide, I expected that this production would have costumes that met or even exceeded the level of detail in Maria Bjornsson's designs. Maybe the active staging with all the running around up and down stairs and the audience interactions meant that they wanted to minimize the risk by creating costumes that were less expensive to replace. Another idea I have is that perhaps the timeline to complete the costumes before the first preview was very tight, and they weren't able to deliver the level of detail that they initially desired. Either way, the contrast between the extremely beautiful Masquerade outfits and some of the lackluster designs for the principal characters was jarring and left me wanting more. The biggest difference with Masquerade, in my opinion, is that it is fully the Phantom's show. The production begins with Masquerade, and when the Phantom struts out, he's not wearing his extravagant Red Death outfit, but rather his classic look. Rather than being a figure of mystery, the Phantom is shown to us in a brand new light. After the scenes in the lair, there's a circus sequence that's borrowed from the 2004 movie. During this scene, you see the carnival workers exploiting the Phantom's musical genius, and you also witness the cruelty and physical abuse that the Phantom suffers due to his disfigurement. This humanizes the Phantom in a new way that the original show did not attempt. I also want to shout out some incredible immersive performances during this sequence, including sword swallowing by cast member Baby Byrne and a really amazing fire routine by Joseph Carr. I even got a shot of cognac during this sequence. For me, the most touching addition is when Madame Giry smuggles the Phantom out of the circus and into the Paris Opera House. She sings the song Learn to Be Lonely from the 2004 film and presents the Phantom with two masks. He chooses a full white face mask and puts it on. When he goes to look at himself in the mirror, he reacts with disgust and smashes his face into the mirror. This causes the mask to split in two, forming the now iconic white half mask. The sequence is very poignant and gives emotional weight to that symbol. Oh, and I bet you're curious about the mirrored mask that I discussed in my costume reaction video. This is not actually worn by the Phantom at any point during the show, and it's merely used as set decoration in the catacombs. A little bit of a letdown, in my opinion. Let's talk about space limitations and the set. This is where my rating gets knocked down from a 9 or 10 and becomes an 8. The chandelier crash is one of the most iconic moments in musical theater, and unfortunately in Masquerade, this is kind of underwhelming. The chandelier is massive, it looks gorgeous, the lighting and the sound effects are all great, but the room that the chandelier is in has a pretty low ceiling, so the chandelier only falls maybe about 6 feet to the floor. It's really not that impressive. It was very underwhelming when you're expecting this massive dramatic crash. In my opinion, the Broadway show actually did this better. The Opera House stage set, it's basically just a square room with scaffolding that's hung with red curtains. I never felt like I was standing on stage at the Paris Opera or in the audience of the Opera House. I felt like I was standing in a converted retail building, because that's what it is. Some sets were packed with gorgeous detail, like the dressing room set. There are beautiful mirrors and lights. makeup on the dressing tables, notes, costume racks. By contrast, the iconic title song was another letdown. You descend an escalator into the lake scene, and unfortunately, there wasn't much fog. The candelabras that were there looked pretty fake. The boat itself looked cheap and plasticky, and not at all as detailed and ornate as the original boat from the show. The overall impression, it was like going down an escalator in a mall and ending up in Spirit Halloween. And while I previously mentioned loving All I Ask of You on the roof, it was actually completely bare. I was expecting a statue or two, like Apollo's Lyre on top of the Paris Opera House, but there was nothing. I'm thinking that maybe there were some city regulations that prevented them from putting something that high up. Then again, right after that, you descend a flight of stairs to a lower part of the rooftop where there is a gorgeous ivy-covered graveyard set for wishing you were somehow here again. That was another highlight of the set design for me. Another unfortunate aspect of these small rooms is that the 40 to 50 people group size is simply too much. You're on top of strangers basically the whole time, and when it's time to transition to a new room, it's very chaotic with hordes of people trying to squeeze through one entrance. I found it very difficult to stick with my party for the experience. Also, since the event demands formal wear or cocktail attire, there were a lot of people wearing floor-length dresses or ones with capes or trains. It was very difficult not to step on some of these outfits. I would advise against wearing garments like this because it's kind of a safety hazard with all the stairs and escalators that you go up and down, and I would just hate to see someone get hurt. Let me be clear though, I think the spacing issues are no fault of the cast and crew. The amount of effort it takes to keep this running smoothly and to coordinate these people from room to room is nothing short of Herculean. I think mainly the production needed to lease a larger building. The performances were flawless across the board. Jeff Kready's Phantom had beautiful vocals, and the chemistry with Claire Leyden's Christine was palpable. Experiencing the live singing up close is incredible. You're able to hear and see details in these performances that you simply would never get in a proscenium theater, especially people who are in the back rows or up in the mezzanine. The only noticeable issue I had was Christine's high E6 in the title song. I know this is usually pre-recorded in the standard production, but it really stood out here being that up close. Another criticism about the music I have is that, other than the violinist, who is supposed to be Christine's father, all of the music is canned. You could just tell that it's pre-recorded and it takes away some of the magic. There were some very well done effects. The Phantom's voice bouncing around the dressing rooms, the shadow work and choreography above the flies when the Phantom hangs Joseph Bouquet, and magic effects that are executed flawlessly at a close-up range that I was completely surprised by. When Christine returns to the Phantom after exiting with Raoul, the Phantom wraps a cloak around her and she vanishes in his arms. It was a beautiful, emotional, and unexpected moment. A final criticism I have relates to the post-show experience. They have a bar and merchandise set up in what I think is the same room where the lake scene takes place. We were told that we only had 10 minutes in this space, which I think is because of our time slot, unfortunately. The cocktails that we tried, while very tasty, cost $26 and were pretty small. Yikes. Also, the souvenir t-shirts we bought with the chandelier on the back cost $55. Double yikes. We definitely felt rushed in this space, and it would have been nice to be able to spend more time here. So who is this for? Phantom fans who can approach this with an open mind will be delighted by the bold creative choices. If you're a Phantom purist who can't handle any deviations from the original, I would sit this one out. For Phantom newcomers, I would recommend at least watching the 2004 movie or reading a plot summary beforehand. A lot of the scenes are presented in a slightly different order. Some of the songs are cut or have different lyrics, so having a familiarity with the story and the character relationships would help greatly. We paid $211.50 each for these matinee preview performance tickets. In my opinion, it was worth every penny. This was unlike anything I've experienced with live theater up until this point. It never felt like a cash grab or like an inferior theme park experience. The dedication of the entire cast, crew, and creative team is incredible. If anything, I think they were just limited by the size of the physical space and perhaps the budget. My 8 out of 10 review breaks down like this. What do I think Masquerade did better? An emotional connection with the story, stronger character development for the Phantom, and true immersion in the world of the Paris Opera House. What do I think the Broadway production did better? More detailed set and costume designs, lush live orchestrations, and a more dramatic chandelier crash. My biggest surprise, phenomenal special effects and magic done at close range. My biggest disappointment, inconsistent sets and costumes. Would I recommend this? A resounding yes, especially if you're curious about immersive theater. When it works, which is most of the time, it is pure magic. Masquerade convinced me that immersive theatrical experiences could be the future for reimagining classic shows. I can't wait to see what else gets this kind of treatment in the future. Thank you again for making my costume reaction video a success. Subscribe for more honest theater reviews like this, and let me know in the comments. Are you planning on seeing Masquerade? Do you have questions that you'd like me to answer about the experience? I'm Julian, this is Julian's Front Row Theater, and thank you for watching.